HTML forms can actually get quite a bit more complex. We'll take a look at another example. For instance, let me open up form1.html, which is a form that I built in advance, which shows a number of other ways that users can provide information as input to an HTML form. Here, we see an input whose type is text, meaning we want the user to type in their name as text. But you might also imagine that if a user is logging into a website, for example, they might, in addition to typing in a text-based name or username or email, also provide a password. And generally, if you've been on a website and you've typed in a password, the password characters don't all show up as the actual characters. For security reasons, they generally show up as just little dots on the screen hiding the actual characters that they're representing. And in HTML, we can do that very easily by just saying that the type of this input is password. If they're typing in a password, our web browser will know not to actually display those individual characters. In addition to just text-based input, we also have radio button input, as I alluded to a moment ago. So here, we have a number of different radio inputs, where the user might be able to select from a number of options, choosing their favorite color, for example, from a number of these options. And finally, just to take a look at one other additional feature of HTML5, in fact, a new feature of HTML5, is something we might call a data list, where we might have the user choose in a drop-down from a number of different options. But we want to very quickly filter down or autocomplete based on those options. So if the user needs to select what country they're from, for example, we might have an input field and specify that it's going to be associated with a list called countries. Then immediately below that I have a data list element whose ID is countries, where here, I'm going to specify these are all of the options for what country we could have. Each one is inside of an option element whose value is whatever country they could select. And we have all of the countries of the world listed in these option elements. So this input here is going to allow me to select one option from a list of all of these possible options. So now, if I open up form1.html, here's what that form ultimately looks like. I can, here, inside of the name field again, that word name shows up, because it's the placeholder I can type in my name here. And inside of the password field anything I type is going to show up as just little dots instead of the actual characters, because the type of that input field was password, instead of the type being text. In favorite color, I now have the ability to choose between various different favorite color options. In a radio button format, I choose from one of a number of options. And finally, inside this country drop-down, I have the ability now when I click on it to see all of the countries, but as I start to type letters, like UNIT, it filters down to only the options that I actually care about. So here if I type in enough letters, eventually I see United States. And I can click on that option as well. So HTML5 builds in these additional features to make it easy to implement something like a text field, where it will auto-complete based on the text that you provide. You can just specify that it is inside of this data list, and then provide a list of all the possible values. And then HTML and your web browser in turn will take care of the process of rendering that information in the way that you expect it to be displayed. So those are just some of the possible HTML elements that we can ultimately create by using these various different elements that we nest within each other. And there are definitely other HTML elements that exist as well that you can begin to explore. But all of them follow a very similar pattern that we're going to have some tag, that might require some attributes, additional information about the HTML. To give context to the web browser for how that element should be displayed. Maybe that element needs to have a particular source for an image. Maybe it needs a link in order to link to somewhere, or other information as well. And then inside of that element, you might nest other elements, so that your table has rows. And inside of those rows, we have other cells. And you might imagine nesting elements inside of other elements inside of other elements. But right now so far, all of our web pages have been rather simple. They've just been we've described the structure of the page, and we've described we want a list here, we want a form there. What we might really like is some way of specifying that we want to style our web page in some way. We want to add color. We want add spacing. We want to add some sort of other layout to our page as well. So, in the next video we will see how we can do that. Thank you.